Bigfoot Collectors Club with Michael and Riley. I know a story of high strangeness or two. Let's do this.
Hi, Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bigfoot Collectors Club, the show where we talk to amazing guests about their personal paranormal history and share stories of high strangeness. I am your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is the necromancer of nice.
That's a good one.
Bray.
Bray.
Yeah.
Riley Bray.
Bringing kindness back from the dead. I appreciate it. That
I love it.
was submitted by our friend and Patreon member, W. Dave Keith. Thank you, Dave.
Cool.
Hello,
Yeah,
Dave.
thanks, Dave.
We
Thanks,
love you,
buddy.
Dave.
Yeah.
We're going to get right into it because we have a very cool guest with some very cool mood lighting. If you're watching this right now over on the YouTube, he is the co-creator and host of the podcast Penny Royal and a purveyor of all things weird in Kentucky. Club Scouts of all timelines, please welcome to the show, Nathan Isaac. Nathan.
Ow. Hey guys, thanks for having me on the show, man. I'm super excited.
We're so excited to have you here. You're a friend of Steve Berg, and as we mentioned, anyone who's a friend of Steve Berg is a friend of ours. So it's so nice to meet you and have you here. Now, we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff. I want to talk about Weird Kentucky. I want to talk about Penny Royale, your podcast, and I want to talk about how you got into all of this. But before we do that, we have to nominate our 5-star Club Scout of the Week. Riley, this is a friend of the show who's given us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Why don't you nominate them now?
Well, this is from Dog Nose Media. Just a great name right off the bat. And the title is BCC Review. And the content of BCC Review is 5 stars, even though they refuse to sell me any Bigfoot steaks.
Fair enough. Dog knows we love you.
It's the FDA has been really clamping down on that, and we just talk to us. Just send us a private message, Dog Knows. We'll see if we can get those steaks to you.
Yeah, we have alternate ways of getting you those Bigfoot steaks. You just got to know how to ask.
We got a tow guy too. So
Yeah.
Talk to him.
Speaking of meat, Nathan, I was listening to your podcast, Penny Royal. And one of the stories that you talk about that comes out of Kentucky, I know we're going to get into your personal paranormal history here, but I have to mention this story from, I think it's the late 19th century about meat falling from the skies.
Yeah, man, the Kentucky meat shower, right? I don't know if people are familiar with that or not, but if people read Charles Fort or any Fortean phenomena, he mentions the meat shower, but it's a pretty famous thing. I guess Olympia Springs, like around 1896 or late 1800s, meat just started falling out of the sky one day. And the family there, they invited everybody over and tasted the meat. There's some, they said it tasted like mutton, like lamb. And it was one of those strange things that people are like, we're just tasting meat out of the sky. Of course, they thought that it was manna from heaven, right? But no.
I think my other favorite theory is that it was, do you want to talk about the planet, the idea that it was meat from another planet?
Yeah, it was sort of like the star jelly stuff, that had fallen from somewhere else. The accepted view of this by the Smithsonian is that it was a group of vultures who all vomited at the same time above the farm, right? Right.
That's
very
so
plausible.
gnarly.
Very plausible. So
Yeah.
But the crazy thing, though, is I went to college in Lexington, Kentucky at Transylvania University, right? It's like Transylvania.
Come on.
Kentucky used to be called Transylvania, right? That was the
Did it
original
really?
name of Kentucky.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this was the Transylvania Purchase. And it just means through the woods. But yeah, man. So I went to this little private college called Transylvania University. And it's like one of the oldest universities west of the sort of the East Coast, It's like 1778, I think it was founded. So like very, very old. But they have a special collection where they keep all these weird like medical devices and samples of stuff. And they actually have a sample, the only known sample of the Kentucky meat shower. in a vial, preserved in alcohol, right?
Whoa.
What is it? What did it look like?
I mean, it just looks like meat.
Little
and
glob of
alcohol.
meat.
You know,
Has
like,
that ever
I
been
don't-
like DNA sampled or?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah.
They should.
Don't ruin the magic, guys.
Yeah, man. If you open it up, it'll change into something else.
Yeah.
I like the idea though that there were like some chunks of meat, but then there were also like thin snowflakes of meat coming down as well.
Yeah. And I just
world
can't
is
believe
weird.
they tasted it, right? That you would,
well,
that you
I
would
mean,
sample
back
it. and
then,
you're like,
meat's
all
coming
right.
from the sky. You're like, all right, we're eating that.
yeah.
Why not?
You basically put everything to your mouth back then that you found in the woods. You know, you had to do
Yeah.
the old, you know.
But apparently if you look at the falls from the sky, Kentucky has a ton. Here in Somerset, there was a fall of frogs in the 1920s, 1930s on this road, Highway 39. It was used to be part of the Great Warriors Way, which is like one of the oldest roads in America. Indigenous Native American road. So. Anyway, in that area, there's some mounds, some Adena and Hopewell mounds from the Mississippian era, and that, of all places, is where shit falls from the sky, right? From like another dimension. So they've had that there, and then there's even a fall of cookies in Kentucky.
Hold on.
Back in the day, there's just a whole list of like strange things that have fallen. But it's funny too that like. All of that shit.
The
used to
Keebler
happen.
Elves tree exploded and
Yeah,
all of their fudge stripes fell out of the sky.
Exploded. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But I mean, it's funny that you hear all those stories back then, but you don't hear any falls now. It seems like, occasionally there's a fish fall, right?
Yeah.
Right.
If there was a cookie shower, I would know about it and I would find it and I absolutely would eat those cookies. That's my go-to dessert.
Yeah.
With like the frog
Again.
fall, is the theory that like it was like a tornado sucked them up and they rained back down, or
that's what science says.
all right?
No,
What
I
do you
mean,
say?
you know.
What do you say, Nathan?
I don't know. I mean, I think of those stories of like the out of place objects. People that would have coins fall, like poltergeist activity,
Apporting.
almost, right? Apporting objects, and so in my mind, I always think of something like that. But there probably is a conventional reason why. But
why frogs? Why frogs specifically? It's like Magnolia. When the
I know. I was wondering if that was
yeah.
the inspiration for that ending of Magnolia.
Yeah.
Spoiler
Well, I
alert.
mean, there
Sorry
are
if you haven't
numerous.
seen it.
Yeah. You've ruined the story, man.
Look, you've had enough time to see Magnolia. All right.
like almost 30 years old now, I feel like. So, Nathan, how did you get into the realm of the paranormal? And have you had any experiences that you yourself cannot explain?
Yeah. I had my first UFO experience with Steve actually Berg last year.
No way. Tell us
Yeah,
about it.
man.
Yeah.
So we had met a guy named Glenn Quiggins. He's become a pretty good friend of ours now. But he, the Daniel Boone National Forest is like a really strange place. It's right above what's called the Kentucky anomaly. It's what NASA officially refers to it as, right? Is the Kentucky anomaly, and it's the highest spike of geomagnetism in North America, right?
Whoa!
So like that area, Sedona, and then there's a place in southern Alaska that also has this spike, right? And anyway, on the other, the Daniel Boone National Forest is right on top of this, and on the other side of it is this guy's farm, Glenn Quiggins, and he's been telling people that for 5 years at 9:00, this UFO appears in the sky, right? And it's this like crazy glowing orb. And then at 4 or 5 a.m., this triangle appears in the other part of the sky, right? Tons of Bigfoot sightings in this area. He had a portal in a cave, right? He tells us that. So Steve and I are like, we've got to go and fucking see this, right? And like, the first time I heard Glenn give in an interview, he mentioned being part of an archaeological dig, like north of here in Bray, where they found giant bones, and where they found this Welsh armor on this body, right? And I was like, "There's no fucking way this is true, right? This guy has to be full
This is
of
all
shit,
too good,
right?
Yeah, totally.
So
It's too many things.
Yeah, it's too many things. It's like the UFOs. He's met Bigfoot. He thinks that his farm is the farm where Daniel Boone supposedly shot a Bigfoot. If you're not familiar with that story, like there's
We'll get into that as well.
But then he told that story about the giants and the bones, and I was like, oh, total bullshit. Come to find out, I found the newspaper article, and they did find it wasn't a giant, but they found the bones of an individual that was larger than a Native American, probably European, in Welsh armor. And it was the University of North Carolina, right? So he was totally telling the truth, right?
Maybe he was like a descendant of the Neanderthals from, like out in Wales who got sucked up in a portal and popped out over Kentucky.
Dropped in the pinnacles. It's a weird area, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, we went over to his house. We were like, are we really going to see UFO? And we had taken a TV crew with us, and we're trying to shoot part of a TV show. And like, we'd gotten rained out. We were about to go home, and we were packing up, and the fucking camera guy is like, there's a fucking UFO in the sky, right? So like, everybody runs outside, and sure enough, it was 9:00, and that like glowing orb popped up. There were 14 people in the crew, and like, we watched that thing fly all over the sky for 45 minutes. Like, wow. Steve and I did, all these people. And we've got the cell phone footage, and you can hear everybody fucking screaming, like, oh my God, there's a fucking UFO. It was awesome. And then, then we went to Buc-ee's and got some fudge. So.
As you do.
What do you do? What else do you do after you see a
minutes
UFO?
of UFO?
Yeah. Well, guys, I guess we go to Buc-ee's now.
To Buc-ee's, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see the triangle? What was the?
No, we didn't.
The orb.
No,
okay.
it was red, green. It wasn't a plane, right? I mean, the thing was like, it would zip down, zip over. I'm just all over the place. And then finally it just zipped away after about 45 minutes. And he has a video of it. I'll send you the video where it's up in the air and a little orb flies out of it. And it hits his power line, and then electricity sparks up and down the power line just outside his window. Dude, it is the craziest fucking. Again, he sent this, and I was like, "There's just no way this." You're
like,
true.
"Come on,
right?"
Yeah, but he's just fully just the most earnest, honest. He's like, "Yeah,
totally, dude." Then we went and camped in the cave another time. Steve flew back in, and we went and did that. So I mean, but it was the first UFO I'd never seen. As much as I've talked about all this stuff, researched it, and. I don't know. It was actually a very emotional experience.
Yeah,
right? Everybody
say,
was really,
Yeah.
What did that feel like for you, having been into this for so long?
I don't know. I was afraid I was going to be abducted later that night, right?
Sure.
Like I had to drop Steve off at his Airbnb and drive home, right, in the dark. Like, I'm not going to make it, man. They're going to fucking abduct me on the way home. But I don't know.
Yeah, I would have been the same way.
It just was like. I don't know, man. Just you can't explain it. You can't. Your mind can't wrap around what this possibly could be that you're seeing. And I don't know. I think it felt good to have that many people a part of the experience, also.
Right.
And it happening. But Steve was like,
was
he
it sort of
shot called it, man. He shot called it.
Was it like that sort of just like sense of wonder, sense of smallness, like?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and that it's not all bullshit. I mean, it really was.
That is so satisfying to be like, there it is, finally, right in front of me, when all these people are seeing it simultaneously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a good experience.
So
but
cool.
Yeah, man, I grew up in Eastern Kentucky in like Appalachia, where it's like fire and brimstone preachers, My parents were like Free Will Southern Baptists, and there was a lot of talk of the devil, at church. Those guys were always like, I hope every one of you leaves this church and is killed in a fucking car crash on the way home so that you go straight to heaven, right? It was that kind of like, crazy mentality.
Wow.
And a lot of just weirdness of
sheriff ever question that minister? Like,
right. They should have, right?
Doing
should
the
have been
Lord's
like
work.
a small child, right? 5 years old listening to some of that stuff.
Gosh.
So, anyway, but that kind of like Southern Baptist area with tons of religion, everything was the devil. The devil was running around the woods. Now we know that's Pan, right? Yeah, that's it's running around. But yeah, I came out of that and just a lot of stories of weird shit. And I've always just been into Fortean phenomena and researching all this stuff. It wasn't really until...
No, go ahead.
It wasn't until I moved down here to Somerset that I really like dove into as much research as what eventually became Pennyroyal, but just looking into this stuff as much as I have, it's been, this place has kind of provoked that.
And as a kid, was it the fire and brimstone and there's devils out in the woods? Did that lead you to Bigfoot, or were you like, well, I've heard about Bigfoot and maybe it's one and the same? Like, what was that bridge exactly to get you into the paranormal section at the library?
Oh man, I don't know. Yeah, I think it was all the talk of like dead people, angels, demons. You know what I mean? There was a lot of the area where I'm from is where the vampire cult, the kids in the 90s ritualistically murdered everybody. That was maybe 20 miles away. And so
wow.
That was very pervasive, this idea.
And that was something
cults,
that really happened, not just a satanic panic rumor.
Yeah. I mean, those were real.
But that was like
murders.
one of the events that kicked it off, right? Like that was like a very kind of big event in the whole satanic panic, right?
Yeah. And they made movies about those kids, teenagers that had done it. But But I don't know. I mean, I just think a lot of that stuff about demons and man, I'm a child of like 1993 when the internet was like at the library. I had to go to the library to get access to the internet, and the first thing you were looking up was like the Necronomicon. I remember like trying to print out the Necronomicon, which wasn't really
Evil Dead real? Question
right? So there was definitely a heavy interest in the occult because of all of the religion that I was surrounded by. That was like, oh, the occult's the fucking devil, and it's like, if these people don't like this, there must be something good about it, right? Or something fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking, drove you in the opposite direction. It sounds like they wanted you to head in.
That sounds cool. Checking that
Don't
out.
want me to do drugs? The drugs must be good, right?
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to hear more about Nathan and Weird Kentucky. Okay, so you said when you got to Somerset County, where you live to this day, is that correct, Nathan?
Pulaski, Somerset's the town, and
Somerset's the town.
Pulaski County,
Pulaski County. I apologize. So you got down to Somerset, and you said that's when really things kicked off for you. What's happening in Somerset that things really grabbed your attention?
Well, when I was down here, we moved. My wife is from here originally. But we moved down to Somerset, and I was living in Lexington, college town, and then moved down here, and like there's nothing going on, right? But I was driving to work and going through downtown, and there were these people that had these signs up right in front of the mayor's office that said, "You did it." And like I got back to my house, and I was over at my neighbor's, and I was like, "Who are all those fucking protesters downtown?" Right? And They were like, that's the family of Linda and Cody, these two kids who were brutally murdered back in like 1994, right? And I was like, what? And then they proceeded to tell me, the neighbor did, this crazy story about how there was a cult in this town and that they had murdered these two kids. And like, it's just this crazy thing. And there's no cult here, by the way, but it was just the folklore, right? And I remember thinking, I left and I thought, that can't possibly be true, right? There's no way. And that set off me starting to look at this place, right? And that's the podcast, the sort of subtitle to it is The Magic and Mystery of Place, right? And it's really like the looking at this place and trying to understand like where those stories came from just kind of like opened up this crazy can of worms of like unbelievable series of events that all crisscross in this one place of all places that seems totally normal, that is the bastion of like the Southern Republican stronghold is this county, right? Hal Rogers, who's one of the most powerful Republican senators, is from Somerset. And so it's always been this like super conservative place, and this place where it was very like picket fences. There's no crime here. Everything's, perfect, idyllic, but it's like beneath that veneer is this like super fucked up place. Like the sheriff here in town, Sammy Catron, was fucking assassinated at a fish fry. A sniper blew his fucking head off, right?
Whoa.
At a fish fry. And they've made movies about this too, you know? And it's like the guy flew
It's like
around.
Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, he flew around in a helicopter. He didn't have a patrol car. He flew around in a helicopter. And he was so loved. He was like a king. And he was so loved that they built small replicas of his fucking helicopter and put them out in front of the grocery stores where kids could put a quarter in and ride in Sammy Catron's fucking helicopter. It had and it was 111 and it was on the side. We found one for $400.
Okay, that is the weirdest thing I've heard.
Dude,
Wild.
it's and so he was supposedly, I don't want to be sued, right? But supposedly involved in a lot of like sort of darker stuff, right? And but loved. If I brought his name up, people would fucking shoot me for talking bad about him, right? But possibly
Hey,
involved.
don't
in
come
some
at
drug
us,
stuff.
listeners in Somerset.
Yeah, man. Right.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
But you know, I look at that guy and it's like his father was the police chief and he was assassinated, right? While he was on the job. And so like there were these weird like generational recursions, I guess you would say, or reverberations of like strange things happening, like the same type of murders. The guy that allegedly, or people were telling me, was involved with those murders, built a fucking pyramid in downtown Somerset with an all-seeing eye and all of this crazy shit written around it, okay? And like it's called the Great Seal Memorial. I mean, how many towns have a fucking pyramid in the center of town with an all-seeing eye?
Very like Illuminati.
Yeah,
like,
while they're like just mowing their lawns and they're, you know, painting their white picket fences. It's such a weird juxtaposition to have.
But how big of a pyramid are we talking?
It's probably like 18 feet tall or something like that.
That's a substantial
with
pyramid.
a giant
Big
eagle
enough.
on top.
Yeah.
It was 1976. It was to commemorate the 200 year, you know, or whatever 300 year anniversary of the United
Bicentennial.
States. But he was a Freemason. There's this is a Freemason town. Somerset has one of the oldest lodges, Lodge 111, which is weird because that's Sammy Catron, who was. He was a Freemason too, and he chose 111 as his call sign, right?
Whoa.
And so the money from the National Freemason Fund was used to build the town. The first bank was a Freemason bank, and like they're really proud of you know, their Freemason. I'm not saying like that in it's any way connected to like what's going on here, but
Right.
Sure.
But definitely it's just one of those like old. At one point there were 7 secret societies here in town. You know, Oddfellows, the Freemasons, a lot of Knights of
And you know they
Pythias,
weren't
all
just
that stuff,
sitting around eating nachos. You know what I mean? If if you got 7 secret societies, like eventually one of them's gonna be like, should we pick a fight with one of these other societies? Should we fuck with these guys? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
right. I mean, they were all definitely doing shit behind closed doors, you know. You know, power
clearly.
deals and stuff like that. So anyway,
That's sort of the idea. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. Secret society.
Yeah.
But the town just has a lot of that old sort of the old history, old money. There were 5 or 6 families that sort of controlled the town. That's where the stories came from. It's like a story as old as time, right? That there are these powerful families that control the town. Somehow they're involved in nefarious baby eating activities, right? You know, I mean, like that was kind of the story that came
cult,
out.
Yeah.
Which was all bullshit. It was just all bullshit, right? It's not
Cult
true.
folklore comes from all that.
Yeah, and it does tie into like the satanic panic stuff, definitely, right? But the town outside of all of that, though, like it is a super weird place, and that's what I began to find was, you know, there's the local stuff like Sammy Catron and things, but then there were just all these. There was like a cast of characters that were unbelievable, right? Places, events that I just couldn't explain easily that they all had occurred in the same place. It was like a fucking layer cake of weird stuff, and it wasn't that any of it was connected. It was only connected through this place for the most part, and that's what I think for me. That's what was so fascinating about it. Was like it's something about the place that seems to be spawning all of the phenomena, all of these. And I felt that it was, I still very much believe that it's the place that is influencing all of these people. In a sense, they become actors in these psychodramas, right? That seem to be embedded in the landscape,
And what is it about the landscape itself? I mean, there are a lot of magnetic properties, minerals in the, like, what are we talking about here? How does the land affect everybody, do you think?
I definitely think it's there are large deposits of quartz here, right? And so the quartz combined with the intense geomagnetism can create what's called the piezoelectric effect, right? And there are tons of studies about the piezoelectric effect causing increases in violence, suicide, mental illness. And that's something the area has, just this crazy like history of violence and crime. And really localized here. Kentucky's not a particularly criminal place, but some extremely violent, heinous murders, crimes. The murders of Lyndon and Cody that I was talking about. Those murders have been on the FBI's like unsolved list for a while too. They've done some documentaries about that as well. But man, when I was telling that story, I did Coast to Coast and told the story of the murders and I got really nervous and laughed while I was telling the story about the kids being murdered, and people fucking ate me alive, dude. Of course. They were like, this guy killed those kids, right? I was like, I was 12 years old.
Guys, it's a leap. Some of us get nervous when we laugh. My dad used to say that to me. I'd be in trouble and he'd, be getting mad at me, and I'd giggle and be like, do you think this is funny? I'm like, no, this is just the only reaction I can have to this. I'm so scared.
Right. I was like, I'm not laughing because of the murders. But yeah, anyway.
No, it's fine. You can giggle along here. It's okay. So it is weird. Is Somerset on like the 37th parallel? Are you getting any of that crazy like paranormal highway activity?
We are on the 37th parallel, which is weird. Wow. If that's, is there any truth to that? I don't know. I mean, there definitely is a clustering of, if you've read the book, or seen any of Chuck, Chuck?
Oh gosh, I can't remember Chuck's last name. Yeah,
Chuck Zukowski. Yeah, who wrote that book. But I mean, it is strange when you look at the 37th parallel. There really is a clustering of strange places, strange events. And it cuts exactly through Somerset, right? So it's like 37.00, whatever, I mean, it's weird. I wonder, the thing that I found recently about this is, so where Somerset is and the Kentucky anomaly is located, if you look at the map, there's an old continent so North America is built out of 3 different ancient continents that came together. And so it's called Laurentia, is the main one, and the edge of it comes from the Hudson Valley down to Somerset, right, to the Daniel Boone National Forest, and then cuts west along the 37th parallel to Sedona, and then goes up to southern Alaska, and it's along that line, and it's all there are quartz deposits, and that's the thing. Sedona has a ton of quartz. We have quartz here as it cuts up to the Hudson Valley through the Blue Ridge Mountains. That's where the
Hudson Valley is a weird place. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And the Brown Mountain Lights, are along that too. So it's like that border, which is exactly where the 37th parallel is, that's the southern edge of this continent that's kind of slammed, into another one. I think there's something about that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's a coincidence, at least.
Yeah.
So strange. So a couple things. Can you tell us exactly what you kind of mentioned it in passing, but the Kentucky anomaly is what? It's just that area, that landmass there, or what is it?
Well, it's a part of the Daniel Boone National Forest, right? And that's where the peak of it is. There are 2 little peaks, and it is, again, it's a part, an area where they can't explain. NASA back in 1982 did a series of
that's
studies,
where like things go around, right?
Yeah. And like there's a spike here, which some of these geomagnetic anomalies will cause the Van Allen belts to kind of like dip down to try to touch the surface of the Earth. And it's not like magnets or compasses are spinning or anything like that, you know, but just they have a way higher than average reading of geomagnetism in this area because of something underneath the surface, right?
Cool.
It also coincides with what's called the Kentucky gravity high. So gravity is a little bit different here. Not enough to, like, you know, it's not like you're on a float or anything, you know, but it's like it's
You might.
things are lighter here, you know. But it's still a denser place. But I don't know. I mean, it's that anomaly in Sedona and then southern Alaska, which southern Alaska, that area is exactly where the Black Pyramid stories come from. Have you ever heard any of the?
I don't think I've heard about the Black Pyramid.
No.
Linda Moulton Howe.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Crazy as shit, right? Batshit crazy. It's, you know,
Allegedly.
She says there's allegedly, you know,
Allegedly.
She says that there's a Black Pyramid buried underneath the snow in southern Alaska, right?
Okay.
But I don't believe that. But there really is
Yeah.
a gravity anomaly or a electromagnetic anomaly up there. So, but I don't know. But this place, it kind of fans out from the Daniel B. National Forest. The actual center of the Kentucky anomaly is a mine that's called the Mount Victory Mine, right? And like of all the shit that happened when I was looking at the pennyroyal stuff was that we had interviewed this woman named Pamela who told us there was a cult, right? Again, here was another woman. She was like, I was in a cult when I was a child, right? And I was like, you know, like definitely I believe what she was saying because what she was saying evidenced some type of trauma, right? I didn't believe that there was a cult, but definitely that she had suffered some type of trauma and that, you know, she had imprinted this idea of the cult on it, right? And I was like, where did this happen at? And she said, the Mount Victory Mine. And I was like, I didn't even know there were mines in this area, right? So I Googled that, Mount Victory Mine. And the first, in like the top 10 results that pops up, it says New York Times, Mr. X dies, right? And it's this story about a guy named Alexander Guterma who appeared in the United States in the 1950s out of nowhere and became like one of the wealthiest men in America, committed the largest stock fraud in U.S. history up until 1955, tried to overthrow the Dominican Republic, and is named as a right? And is named as a co-conspirator in the JFK assassination, right? This article's talking about this. And it says, in 1975, he purchased a mine in Somerset, Kentucky, called the Mount Victory Mine, and moved his entire financial operation to Somerset, right? And I'm like, what the fuck, man? Fucking Mr. X, right?
This dude sounds like an alien or something undercover.
Well, yeah,
like,
and then he bought the mine from a corrupt attorney here in town named Lester Burns and his business partner, Spiro
has there
Agnew.
ever been a more corrupt attorney name than Lester Burns?
Lester Burns. They wrote a book about him because he represented some people who'd been murdered, and he took the money that had been stolen from the people that they'd been murdered for $1 million, and he said, that's my fee. And the money, he washed the money. That's what he ended up being convicted for literally washing the blood off the money that he was paid in, right? They wrote a book called Dark and Bloody Ground about this guy. That guy owned the mine with Vice President Spiro Agnew. And the two of them, yes, dude, this is all fucking factual.
Mr.
Right?
X and Spiro Agnew owned the mine together.
That was so they sold it, right? The attorney and Spiro Agnew sold it to Mr. X, right?
Got it.
But imagine how you're feeling right now, right? That's how I was reading this. I was like, this can't be real, right? This
is the layer cake you're talking about, where you're just like, how could this place get weirder?
Right.
And I keep finding all this strange history.
This white picket fence town. Yeah, it's just stranger and stranger.
But,
wait,
but there wasn't.
So what's up with this mine? Like, continue down this path here.
So they had the mine from he was here from 75 to 77. He flies from Somerset in a private plane with his whole family to go watch the circus in downtown in New York, right? In Madison Square Gardens. And on the way to New York, his plane fucking crashes, kills him and his whole family, and is investigated by the House Assassinations Committee because he was supposed to testify. right? They thought that he had been assassinated before he could. What's his name? DeMoran Schilt, who is one of the main JFK conspirators that they looked at, is one of this guy's closest friends, right?
Okay.
And there's tons of like the JFK assassination runs through this whole story of Somerset because one of the senators that was on the Warren Commission, right, is from Somerset. 7 people on the Warren Commission, and one of them is from here, right? And
Crazy.
And so those guys knew each other. But anyway, there was the mine. He dies in 1977, and then the fucking federal government takes over the mine. And it's government property right now. I mean, you can go up there and see it. One of my favorite stories that has ever happened with this whole thing is that when the first season finished and I needed to do the promotions for it, I took I think there were 12 people that came with me because I wanted to shoot a promo of people in robes, right, at the mine. And I commissioned that a giant, a 6 foot tall pyramid of mirrors be built by this guy, right?
Okay.
He built this for me.
Awesome.
So I got all these robes and we went up there to the Mount Victory mine to shoot this. And it's night, and I had another podcaster with us. He drove my truck in between 2 trees accidentally, right? Because I had to film the commercial.
So you got wedged.
Right? Oh yeah, dude. I had to film. I was like, "Can you drive?" And he was like, "Yeah, I can drive." He guns it in reverse, shoots it in between these 2 trees, right? And I'm like,
my
"Are you
God.
fucking kidding me?" Right? So we're standing there trying to get this truck dislodged from these two trees, right? In the middle, I'm saying the mine is like 15 miles on a single like road that's just gravel that turns into dirt, and so like no one's back there, and there's 12 people in fucking purple robes. They're standing by this pyramid, right, on the side of the road, and it's like 11 o'clock. Fucking headlights coming up the road, right?
Oh,
And I'm
no.
like, oh my God. So this fucking truck pulls up, and this guy, he's like, y'all need some help? And I was like, no, man, we're cool. Everything's all right. You know, just like, we're just getting my truck out. And he's like, all right. He drives up and he turns around and he comes back and he parks. And I'm like, fuck, you know, like what's like all these people are in robes, you know,
Yeah,
like this looks
totally.
really bad. It looks sinister.
Really
you know?
weird. Yeah.
He gets out and he comes over and he's like, watch out, there's snakes over there. And we're like, dude, there's no snakes. The fucking car drove over top of that spot, you know? He's like, come here. So he takes me over to his truck. It's this little S10, right? And he pulls this tarp back, and there's all of these plastic tubs. And he opens up one of the tubs, and it's full of fucking snakes, right? And the guy's like, do you want to buy some snakes? Right? And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? You know, I was like, no, dude, no, I'm cool. And he's like, all right. He's like, you need help getting out? I was like, no. I was like, I don't need snakes. We're cool. Gets in, he fucking drives off. Well, later I realized that he was out there catching snakes to sell to the Pentecostal Holy Roller Church. And he thought that we were a fucking religious group.
Of
that
course,
wanted
it's
the
like, yeah,
fucking
these guys,
snakes.
they're going to buy some snakes.
They got a glass. They got
Jackpot.
a.
It's a
See
nice
the robes,
night.
the pyramid.
I'm
These
out
guys
of the
need some
woods.
snakes.
That's so funny.
Wow, I love that
Yeah,
so
dude.
much. Enterprising young
God.
man sounds like. All right, when we come back, I want to hear about this Daniel Boone Bigfoot story, and then I want to hear some theories about the Kentucky Goblins, because I know you got some. All right, we are with Nathan Isaac of Pennyroyal. What's Pennyroyal stand for? What is that? Where's that name come from of the podcast?
So this area of Kentucky, from Mammoth Cave, like the western part of Kentucky, that's which is the largest cave in the world, right? That runs all the way underneath Kentucky. From
yeah.
there to where Somerset is the Pennyroyal Plateau, and it's named after pennyroyal, which or pennyroyal tea. You've heard the Nirvana song. It's an
course,
herb that
yeah.
grows here that's used in abortions, right?
Oh, whoa.
Or Native Americans used it for that, right? And that's why Pennyroyal Tea, that lyric comes from, and then this area is called the Pennyroyal Plateau. Anyway, it was perfect when I was like, oh, this is a great name because this is the region where all this shit's happening, you know? So,
I was wondering if that was in reference with that Nirvana song, and that makes sense. Yeah.
That's wild. So the Mammoth Cave. Okay, so I feel like the Mammoth Cave system is often pointed at as like, that's where it all comes from, brother. That's where Bigfoot comes from. That's where the goblins come from. You know, and you see like there's that like map that turns up a lot on the internet that shows you like the cave systems under the United States. And then people go, that's bullshit. Like, give us the real lowdown on the Mammoth Cave system. What are your thoughts on it? Like, where have people taken it too far, and where do you think like we haven't gone far enough?
Oh man, I mean, it's definitely weird. The original stories of Agartha and like an entrance to the inner earth comes from Mammoth Cave, right? H.P. Lovecraft's first story is about Mammoth Cave, the thing in the cave, right? So the beginning of horror, in a sense, starts in Mammoth Cave, or modern fiction horror, right? But it is weird. There's the cave wars. There's all kinds of strange shit. The caves are haunted and shit like that. But they're heavily connected to the story of John Uri Lloyd's Edidorpa, which is the story of the inner earth with all the like mushrooms and shit, the psychedelic,
the
trip,
weird
you know?
faceless being that you see that artwork, which is so cool.
Yeah.
I also think that's had a little bit of an influence on the season of Severance, if anybody's watching.
Really?
When they go out to this quick sidebar, when they, I think it's like the fourth or fifth episode when they're doing the retreat in the snowy forest, and they talk about Keir Egan's history of coming to this place and like facing himself. There's a character called the Bride in this lore, and the artwork that they show looks a lot like some of that weird artwork from the Edidorpa story. And I'm like, they had to have, because also the time period is right for Keir Egan. Like, I'm like, this has got to be some of this sort of turn of the century, early sci-fi, weird, spiritualist sort of like self-discovery folklore, I'm like, this has to happen. I need to talk to the writer's room. Somebody must have seen this stuff. Anyway,
wow, so, makes sense.
Yeah. I
haven't started Severance yet. I'm getting ready.
Severance is great. Also, like Severance is all about the underworld, because all the innies go down into an elevator, or outies go down in the elevator, and they become somebody else. And there's a lot of parallels to the Orpheus myth, especially going on in this season. So I don't know. It's the best show on TV. Maybe one of the best shows ever made. You should watch it.
That's cool, man. Well, I mean, that's definitely like the Mammoth Cave stuff really adds this like subterranean element to the whole thing that's happening. And like all of Kentucky's lore, right, I think is driven by this idea of this subterranean sort of level, beneath everything. The Kentucky Goblins, obviously, there's the connections that people draw that they went down into the caves there. They went underneath Kentucky and then popped up in Pikeville, right? People were, obviously people that watched Hellier or any of that stuff. I kind of have those stories. They connect it to the Hopkinsville Goblin stuff. But, it is weird. I mean, the caves are strange. This whole landscape underneath the Pennyroyal is called karst. And so it's just like tons and tons of flowing water, sinkholes. One of the big things that when I interview people here, there are all these stories of lights coming up out of the sinkholes. They're called Indian lanterns here, right? But they're basically they're orbs, right? And they go back down into the holes. Supposedly they move through the cave systems. A lot of strange stories like that are pretty fucking freaky, But beneath us is the Sloan's Valley cave system, and it connects. It's believed to connect with Mammoth Cave. It's massive, this is a world-class caving and spelunking area. There are people that come from all over the world. There's a specific entrance here in Pulaski County to go down into miles and miles of caves. And they have like a caving Thanksgiving where international cavers come every November.
Cavesgiving?
Cavesgiving, dude. I hope they've named it that. That'd be great, But yeah, I just think it also just adds to the the mystique of the things that have been happening in Kentucky, and kind of the idea of Kentucky as dark and bloody ground. I don't know. To me, Mammoth Cave is really definitive of that there is this hidden sort of nature, duplicity almost, or subterranean.
Well, and it ties right into the idea of Somerset being a city where like there's something beneath, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The idea of like beneath all the veneer is this other darkness, and that is what a cave system underground is, right? Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say there are tons of tons of tunnels underneath Somerset too. There's 3 systems of tunnels. There's some that connect to the nuclear bunkers. There's like a small nuclear bunker and a radio station in the bunker it was like the civilian. I forget what the actual name of it was, but it was like in case of the bombs going off, people would go there, and there's an emergency radio station to contact people, right? So there are those
like the fallout shelters down there.
Yeah, fallout shelter. And
So
then there are
there's
those
man-made tunnels running through underneath the city. That's weird.
Civil War tunnels. There's all these articles in the newspaper where they were digging downtown, and they just uncovered mystery tunnels. And it's like, mystery tunnels discovered in downtown Somerset. They don't know who built those, right? But they're really nice, curved, perfect bricklaying, right? But they don't know where they came from, and they're not in the record of the town, right? And so,
it's so cool.
In addition to the caves, it's like there are these tunnel stories, and it's just
I think we know who made those tunnels. I think it was one of those 7 secret societies. Yeah.
Right, one of those
allegedly.
Yeah,
Allegedly.
like the tunnel boys are like, not us.
And are there stories of like the secret tunnel men?
Yeah.
Don't look at us. Yeah. Are there stories of Bigfoot coming in and out of these tunnels using, because we hear stories about Bigfoot using the cave systems to traverse, the landscape.
One of the things when Steve Berg was with me, and we were at Glen Quiggins, we'd interviewed a guy here in Somerset at the Daniel Boone National Forest, and he's like an outdoor guide, takes people everywhere, and he had a story about this cave called Satan's Cave, and it was nearby. Of course, it's called Satan's Cave.
Now listen, y'all. I know there are a lot of caves here. We can name them anything we want to, but we got to save one cave for Satan. Okay, y'all.
Satan's Cave. So they
this
would
one here belongs to Satan.
Full of snakes.
Full of snakes, yeah. That's where the snakes are. But they would leave food outside this cave, right? Mm-hmm. And the local people would, supposedly. And something that lived in the cave would take it.
Satan's Uber Eats.
Yeah, right. He's hungry, man.
Satan's DoorDash. Just leave it outside the cave for Satan.
Yeah, that's right.
But they ended up putting bars on that cave, right? And they said it was because of endangered bats. All right. So we're at Glen Quiggins, right? He's telling us this story about his neighbor and that he's had Bigfoot on his property, right? And that's at the Satan's Cave, in that whole area, there were all of these sightings of this Bigfoot that people kept reporting. And so the guy was telling me, he's like, I think it lives in the cave, and I think they walled him in there, right? And so we're talking to Glen Quiggins, and he's like, well, yeah, my neighbor had Bigfoot. He showed me the picture too of a handprint on the guy's window. It's this giant handprint, right? And he's like, Bigfoot has been coming to this guy's house. He lives in a cave down the road. And he said the Daniel Boone National Forest rangers, they walled him in there with bars. And I was like, what? And so apparently the guy was outside one day, and these rangers, like 6 trucks, come speeding by. They drive past this guy's property down to this cave. And about 3 hours later, they fly back out. He goes down there, and they've put these installed bars across the cave and put a sign up about endangered bats. And it was exactly the same fucking story that Josh had told us about the cave over here in Pulaski County. And Glenn, Steve and I too are visibly like, holy fuck, dude, this is this guy doing the same thing. But yeah, I mean, there are tons of stories like that. There's a Bigfoot cast here in Somerset on Sinking Creek. Like, there's the Lake Cumberland. This is a lake town, right? We're on this it used to be the largest man-made lake east of the Mississippi River. And so big boating place. I think that adds to the weird crime veneer is that in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, this was a resort town. So like, picture Dirty Dancing, right? But like a lot of corrupt, powerful people coming down here for the summers. And it's the fucking houseboat capital of the world. Almost all houseboats during the 1970s were manufactured in fucking Somerset, Kentucky, right?
This is the weirdest town ever.
Claim to fame, dude.
You want to do some shady stuff too. You go do that on a houseboat.
Exactly.
Oh, on a houseboat. That's what I'm saying. It's like,
Yeah,
think about
fully.
the 60s and the 70s. Of course they were fucking
man.
killing people on houseboats,
Oh,
you know?
they were
God,
dumping them in this giant lake. Yeah.
Well, I just got done making my fourth murder boat. I mean, houseboat, y'all. Come on down, Pete's houseboats. Nothing weird going on here.
But on Lake Cumberland, there have been these Bigfoot, the Thomas Shea, North Kentucky Bigfoot organization. They came down, they cast it. So there's a bunch of shit like that. There's tons of Bigfoot sightings. You know, there's a heavy, like that Daniel Boone National Forest has some of the craziest. All right, I got one more. I got another story I got to tell you just because.
Yeah, please.
it is
Keep them coming.
absolutely bonkers, man.
Yeah.
I didn't even write this one down. I was like, I better write down this. I don't want to forget anything, right? But talking about the Daniel Boone. So I really wanted to interview a park ranger, you know, and like people see fucking Black Panthers here. That's the number one thing of all the people that I interview. The number one thing reported is fucking Black Panthers, and there are no melanistic black cats in North
Right.
America, right?
Yeah.
But people see them all the time, and so I wanted to talk to park ranger to see if there had been any reported. And it's a friend of mine. He was a park ranger, and I was like, so. What's the strangest thing? If you've seen anything strange out there, because he goes for like 3-4 days marking trees and camping, right? To do like forest removal, you know, and tree removal stuff. And so he won't come back for 4 days. He's just deep camping. It's 70,000 acres of forest, I think. Or no, I'm sorry, 700,000 acres of forest.
Oh, wow.
So like huge forest. So I said, have you ever seen anything strange? And he's like, no, I've never seen anything strange. I was like, you've been for 4 or 5 days at a time in these woods, and you've never fucking heard anything, seen anything. And this is like a very straight shooter, right? Very straight shooter. And he's like, no, never seen anything. He goes, well, there was this one time. He said, I had an intern with me, a high school student who was going to go in the forestry project. And we were about 2 days in hiking. And he said, there are no roads. You know, and then this is, if you look at the maps, there's no way to build roads here in this area. I mean, it's just crazy terrain, like very remote. And like he said, he's back there with his kid, they're walking, and all of a sudden this clearing opens up, right? This big, huge clearing. And in the center of the clearing, and there are no roads, there's no way to even get a road back here. In the middle of this clearing is a giant 40-foot tall mountain of trash, of like refrigerators, washers and dryers, like just a giant thing of junk is just piled up. He said it was 40 feet tall, and it was to a peak. And he said at the base of it was this old, like 1950s truck with grass growing up in it. Okay. And he said on the fucking hood of the car was the severed head of a fucking cow. And there was blood, fresh blood running off the hood of the truck, right? And he's like, and he said, well, the high school kids started to really freak out. And I was like, well, fuck, man. What are you talking about? He said, and then, you know, the kid's like, we better go. And he said, that's when I saw a guy's leg move who was sleeping in the truck. Someone was like, he saw the foot drop down. He said, immediately he grabbed the kid and fucking took off. And I was like, dude, he was like, I don't even know. He's like, it's deep in the forest. He's like, there are 0 roads. They couldn't have even driven that truck there. And I was like, you didn't think that was the strangest thing?
I was surprised that took prodding to get to.
Right?
He's like, well, there
like,
was this one thing.
Yeah, dude, you know, so, I mean, there was a federal agent that was murdered in the Daniel Boone and hung from a tree that had FED fed spray paint. Like, there's some drug dealing going on deep in the woods. So, like, this very well could have been a trash pile of some drug. There's no paranormal thing here. I'm just saying, what a
Spooky
fucked up
as hell,
scene.
though.
I was, for a minute there, I thought I was like, is Bigfoot building his own pyramid of junk out in the...
Well, He
know?
didn't see what
Maybe
it
that
was. It
sheriff
couldn't
in his
have been
helicopter
Bigfoot's.
was dropping that stuff off one by
Yeah,
one.
it's true. The helicopter was my other thought.
Building his trash pyramid.
So Daniel Boone killed Bigfoot out there? You didn't tell us the story.
Dude, there's this old story that so Daniel Boone had a hunting station on the other side of the Daniel Boone Forest. It's really why it's called the Daniel Boone Forest. And he and the long rifleman, right, that hunted back in the day, they supposedly were hunting in this area, and they encountered what he called a Yahoo. He referred to it as Yahoo because of Gulliver's Travels, right? And apparently Daniel Boone was well read, right? He wasn't just like a redneck or anything or country bumpkin. He was well read, and so he referred to it as a Yahoo. Supposedly, according to the journals in the story, it grabbed his son, who was like 14 at the time, and picked his son up, slammed him to the ground, right? Ooh. And supposedly Daniel Boone shot the thing, right, in the chest. And he kills it. He kills the Bigfoot. And supposedly, and I don't know if I believe this part, I do think that there was an encounter because there's a reference to the encounter by people that were with him in their journals that they encountered some creature, right? But other people have said that, I'm sure the story's become conflated, but that they cut into the chest of this thing and it had a carapace, like layers of bone or like armor underneath of it in its chest. Whoa. Right? And when he shot it, it had gone through where where it sort of pieces together and then made it through the piece. I don't know, but they said it was like turtle shell is how they referred to turtle shell covered with flesh. You know.
Well, what's weird about that is there are all these stories of like Bigfoot being shot and then like shrugging it off or shooting at them and hearing metal sounds. Something like metal. So. I don't know. It's part of the high strangeness recipe for sure that, the mechanical aspects of Bigfoot as well.
Steve and I, when we were at the cave at Glenn Quiggin's farm, we slept in the cave overnight, right? And the entire time we heard the samurai chatter outside the cave.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we heard that. And there was a weird mechanical noise that we couldn't explain. And we were like deep in the
doors, the doors slamming, and the weird, sounds like weird screeching of metal and stuff, or engines running.
It was weird.
That's really weird.
The engine sound was, and then we have recordings of all of that stuff. Now we didn't see anything, but just outside the cave, Glenn supposedly encountered a Bigfoot. He told us the whole story. He really believes that cave, that area, is where the altercation happened, and it is near the official Daniel Boone's hunting station. So his belief is that they were about 4 miles south of that, and that's how they ended up on this property. And it is really beautiful. Wild. It's a crazy looking cave. It's a really special place. And so it's on private property. It's very fucking difficult to get to. I mean, Steve was cut all to fucking pieces, bleeding. We've got great footage of that. Buddy. It looks great.
Steve.
Steve, but it really is deep in the woods. So it's exactly the kind of place where you would find Bigfoot. That's what we said to Glenn. We were like, this looks like where you would encounter, a Bigfoot.
Wow.
But it was cool. It was a very cool place.
So finally, do you think what's the take on Hopkinsville for you? Do you think that it's connected to the caves, or do you have an alternate theory to what that was all about?
So, have you guys ever read Isabel Davis's report on the Hopkinsville Goblin case? She was one of J. Allen Hynek's investigators for the Center for Youth Studies, right? It's called Incident at or Close Encounter at Kelly is what it's called.
Okay.
And
this all rings a bell.
It was written in 1978, but it's her notes from this occurred in 55, so I think it was in 56. So a year later she was there, right, interviewing people. And it is like a 150-page, very detailed report of the incident. And she's interviewed all the sheriffs, all these people. One of the interesting things that you never hear about is that a sheriff's deputy, before the incident happened, reported officially, and he was 3 miles away at this diner, reported officially that he saw a green fireball shoot through the sky, right?
Okay.
And back in 55, right, about around the early 1950s, the federal government had a project called Project Twinkle, where they were studying the green fireballs, and there were like fucking shit tons of them, right?
We talked about this during Saucerama last summer.
Did you really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he sees that, right? And that's an official report. That's in his report. Now, that's been used to say, well, what the family saw is what he saw. But this was like 2
Right.
hours earlier, right? And he actually ends up being one of the people at the farmhouse. And, it's a strange story anyway because, multiple police deputies, sheriffs, the 4 guys from the local military base, they all show up, that night after this gunfight breaks out and then end up leaving. So there's a ton of witnesses that there were, bullet holes in the place. But there's this, if you read her report, she points out that the family, right, that they were the Suttons and Glennie, I forget what Glennie's last name is, but she's sort of the matriarch of the family, right?
Yeah.
And so they were all coming back from a revival, a tent revival at a fucking Pentecostal church of holy rollers with snake handlers, okay? So like a very heightened religious state of like, you know what I mean? Like that they were in this situation, like seeing all this crazy shit. People are talking in fucking tongues. They're being, bitten by snakes, a crazy, intense, emotional situation. They leave that event. They leave that church, the tent revival, drive back to Kelly, and on the way get into a discussion about a picture of a little silver man that was in a French magazine. It comes on the radio. There's a reference to it. And the family starts talking about it in the car. And Glennie has a fucking magazine at home that has the picture in it. And they start arguing over this, right? And it's a picture of a little silver man being held by 2 government agents. Have you ever seen this? So like the picture is, it's an April Fool's hoax. It was a hoax in a French magazine, right? About a little silver spaceman.
Sure.
It's right after that conversation and coming from a fucking Pentecostal holy roller event that they go home and have this encounter with these little metallic goblins, right?
That is bizarre. Yeah.
And so, like, you see how it could, they're already in a heightened religious state. And they initially people were like, well, there were 12 of them. In all the accounts, there was only one instance where 2 were visible by a witness at the same time.
Right.
There could have only been 1 or at the most 2, right? So I think that's an interesting aspect of the case that there was this little silver man picture argument that I didn't realize.
So they almost
they
like
holy rollers
manifested whatever these beings were possibly,
right?
Conjured them somehow.
So the other odd thing, supposedly, is that John Mulholland, a stage magician who worked with the CIA, a year after the event happened, he visited Hopkinsville. He visited Kelly and was asking questions of the family, supposedly, at the behest of the CIA about the event. Supposedly, it's the only official investigation by the CIA of an encounter, right?
Okay.
And that's odd. He's the guy that wrote the deception manual, right, for the CIA. And really interesting character. But again, he's a stage magician, right? And he even wrote an article about UFO hoaxes in 1955. So that guy visits. He is associated with the MK Ultra program. The guy that was thrown out the fucking window, that Wormwood, this show was made about. I forget the guy's name right now, but in his wallet was a business card of this magician, right? So like he's connected to Gottlieb, all those guys, right? So I started wondering too, is it possible, because MK Ultra started in 1953, did they dose these people? Right? And I'm not saying at the farm, did they dose them at a holy
They would have done it
event?
at the church.
Yeah.
Because it's an easy place. They're drinking fucking strychnine, right? They're already fucking seeing shit. If they dosed them and then they had this happen and then they were checking up to see the effects of it, right?
Yeah.
And a year later, how it had spread, right? So that's one thing. Here's the other thing that I came across.
That's an interesting theory. Yeah.
I got to write for a History Channel show a couple years ago, right? And called Dark Marvels. And I was researching for one of the episodes I was writing about spy planes, about the U-2 spy program, right? And while I was researching it, I saw that, that's Area 51 was created for the U-2 spy program, right? That's really the original purpose. There wasn't UFOs. They were just Groom Lakes is where they were flying these things. And so in August, so this all happens, I think, August the 22nd, 1955, right? The U-2 spy planes flights, test flights, they started on August the 1st and continued through August. And there were like some crashes when they were testing these things, right? And so when I was reading that, and I was like, well, I should check the dates. And I thought, what if what they saw crash on the back part of the property was actually a fucking U-2 spy plane? And the U.S. government used this to cover up the crash.
Totally.
Right? And that's why Mulholland shows up a year later. He showed up to see if they were talking about any of this stuff, right?
Right.
Did the story take, right? Did the Goblin story take? Did these people saw this thing? But
it
really,
took.
the government.
Let me tell you, it took.
That is one of the more plausible theories that covering that whole thing that I've heard. Actually, it really does kind of track. Actually, it all lines up and makes
Isn't that weird?
sense. Yeah.
You should, if you haven't read Isabel Davis's report, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a deep dive into all this stuff.
I mean, we still have. We've come back to this case like we're doing tonight, and we talked to Geraldine Sutton Stith, but we haven't done like a deep dive return to the Hopkinsville case. So like, I think that could be in the future for sure. Nathan, I mean, if we weren't interested in Kentucky before tonight, we definitely are now. So job well done. This stuff is
quartz deposit, edge of an ancient continent, gravity anomaly, magnetic anomaly, cult history, secret societies,
murders,
giant cave system,
severed cow heads. This is wild.
Pyramid.
Don't forget about the meat, guys. Don't forget about the meat.
And of course it rained meat. Yeah. It's a lot of layers on that cake.
Nathan, where can people find you and find Pennyroyal and anything else you might be working on?
It's Pennyroyal's 2 seasons of it are out on Spotify, Apple, all the podcasts. Third season's coming out later this year. And cool. I've also got a Patreon, Liminal Lodge, if people want to see we do weekly live streams about the research, kind of like while I've been doing production on season 3. So,
and let me tell you, I started listening to it, and like it's a full audio documentary. Like you're talking to like the gentleman who had the meteor stuff falling on his house. Like he's out. Like it's an audio documentary. You know what I mean? So you're putting a lot of work and a lot of research into this. This isn't just Nathan sitting down with a 7-page book report and reading it to you guys. Like this isn't this show. It's not this show. Like it's real. There's some real work, and you're out in the field and you're talking to eyewitnesses. It's a really cool show. I cannot wait to continue the series. So I definitely urge everybody to go subscribe to it right now. So thank you so much, Nathan, man. It's been a blast. We'll definitely have to have you on in the future, and keep us posted about Strange Kentucky, please.
Yeah.
Thank you guys, man. Thanks again for having me on the show. That's awesome.
Oh, it's been a blast.
Pleasure. Yeah. Cheers, man.
Wow. It's just the two of us now, isn't it?
It sure is. We're back.
I had such a blast talking to Nathan. That was so great.
Me too.
That town sounds insane.
Like truly it's like cinematically insane. Lynchianly insane.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the white picket fences and everything that resides underneath,
Also, I feel like that's what actors should be called, or cinematically insane.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's sign off. But before we do, we're gonna swing by our friends over at BCC The Other Side. And we're going to say to those friends, thank you very much for joining the Patreon recently. Let's do some Patreon shout outs, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Lucas Hargett.
Thank you, Lucas.
Skadoozy, Cosmeteer.
Skadoozy, welcome to the ranks.
Paige, Cosmeteer.
Paige, thank you, welcome.
Heather Ralston, Cosmeteer.
Oh, Heather, thank you, welcome.
Sean Leslie, Cosmeteer.
Sean, I know who that is. Welcome.
And
Thank you.
Supple Leopard, Cosmeteer. Welcome back, Supple Leopard.
Supple Leopard, welcome back to the ranks.
Yes.
Thank you.
You too can join Supple Leopard and become an official Club Scout when you join patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub and unlock total access to BCC with 3 bonus episodes every month, access to the BCC Discord, and much more. You can upgrade to the Cosmeteer membership for ad-free main episodes and exclusive music tracks from the one and only Necromancer of Nice himself.
Riley Bray.
That's right.
You can get the new Tanya's theme and Tanya After Dark.
Oh man, 2 of my favorite releases. They're the best.
Those are fun. That Tanya's theme was all composed on the Tempest, composed and performed in one singular take on the Tempest drum machine.
Oh, dude.
An old beast that I've had kicking around the studio for so many years and never quite fully connected with until about a year ago. And suddenly I was like, I understand this machine now.
I had a very good time cutting together the little animated clip for Tanya's theme as well.
I watched that like 12 times. It's like all your little choices with the little pixelate and all the different Tanyas. Oh man.
I
great.
downloaded a JCPenney catalog PDF from 1986.
I was wondering what your source material was.
I was picking up my friend from his hotel and he got in the car and I'm just like screen grabbing all these like women in like 80s bathing suits.
It's so good.
Like, don't worry about it. It's for my Bigfoot podcast. Trust me, it'll make sense one day. Oh, golly. All right. Well, let's swing by the Collector's Corner before we head out. Riley, what are you reading, watching, consuming? Anything you want to plug? Any attention you want to point our Club Scouts towards?
Well, I'm late to the party, but I finally just watched what's it called? The Chalamet Dylan movie?
I'm Still Here. No, that's the original one.
That's
What
the
is
other
it?
one.
A Complete Unknown.
A Complete Unknown. Man, it's good. That's a good movie.
Was it good?
Yeah, it's really good. I'm a big fan of Chalamet, I gotta say, and he really nailed that role. And also, I'm terrible with names, but the actress that did Joan Baez, like, phenomenal.
Is that
What a performance.
Oh, yes.
I'm so bad at all this, but
Hold on. I know her.
you guys have Google.
She was in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Was she really?
Yes, I think.
Oh, wow.
She had like one of her first like guest star roles on that show. I was not in that episode. Hold on. Let me see. Actress.
She really nailed Joan Baez. She really captured her essence and the singing and the harmonizing, and it's just a great performance. What an incredible
Monica
movie.
Barbaro.
There it is. Yeah.
I've heard she's great in it, and I've heard the movie's really good. James Mangold. I love James Mangold.
Is he did Johnny Cash?
Yes, and he also directed The Dial of Destiny, Indiana Jones, my souvenir mug I'm holding right here.
Oh, the director.
Yeah, he did Johnny Cash. He did the Walk the Line.
Yes, okay, cool.
That's what I thought you meant. So
Cool.
He's great.
Oh, right on. Well, yes, just so that's the media I've most recently consumed and thoroughly enjoyed it. I was obsessed with Bob Dylan in college.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, little 19-year-old Riley I bought the songbook. I went down to the bookstore, bought the Bob Dylan songbook, learned it back to back.
Oh,
You know, here I got like, you want to do?
You know what I'm obsessed
a little
with?
show and tell. I bought this guitar.
Ooh, I'm obsessed with that jacket. I have to say.
Oh, thanks. This is from Named Collective.
Ooh,
Sparkly.
it looks great.
This
I
guitar
like
is
the collar on it.
from the 1940s. Still kicking around. Look at
Really?
that. Yeah. I bought it at the Starving Musician in UC Berkeley during my Bob Dylan obsessive era.
That's a pretty cool guitar.
Yeah. That's my show and tell.
Speaking of Oscar movies, I also late to the party. I watched Anora this weekend.
Ah, yeah.
Which is fantastic, and obviously won Best Picture. It was like the one I was like, I'm behind on all of them. I'll watch Nora, and hopefully it'll win a lot, and it did.
It did.
Have you seen it yet?
I have seen it.
Did you like it? I was like, there were moments where I was like, I think Riley would. You don't like it. You didn't like it.
I don't want to take
like
a strong. Okay, here's the thing. I actually am a big fan of Sean Baker.
Yeah,
I love Starlet. I love Tangerine. I like Denora. I did like it. I'm not going to publicly go on my whole rant about it here.
We can go. You can tell me off mic.
I'll tell you about it. But you know what? It is a beautiful film. And my biggest takeaway from all of that is that a $6 million indie swept the Oscars.
Yes,
and
which
that
is great.
Rules.
Yeah.
So that's great. Also, Flow, the animated
Cat
feature
movie.
Yeah, made in Blender, like beat Pixar with all of their proprietary software. So that's my biggest takeaway from the Oscars.
Okay. Well, we'll agree to disagree on it.
I'm a big Sean Baker fan. I'll say that, and I'm not going to talk any shit. It's a nice film. It really is.
I was pleasantly surprised by how funny it was, and I loved the way it was shot, and I don't know, I really liked it. So check it out if you want. Find out if you're a Riley or a Michael.
I'm not saying anything. I said nothing.
What else do we have to plug? You got any shows or anything coming up?
Nothing important to speak. Oh well. There's stuff brewing.
You're gonna be playing concerts.
There's gonna be a Pussy Riot thing at the Museum of Contemporary Art in June.
Oh, great!
That's gonna be really cool. That's cooking.
Keep
an eye out for that. I've got other projects going, but nothing to plug. Just working away.
Sounds good. Yeah. I want to thank everybody who's been picking up copies of my graphic novel Adventure Van over on my eBay shop. And I still have a couple sets of Lucid, my other comic book series, left. And once those are gone, they're gone. So come over. There's a link in my bio if you want to check those out. I'm doing doodles of cryptids and I'm signing them for you, and it's very fun. So thanks to everybody who's been popping over there. Okay, one last thank you to Nathan for joining us on this adventure, and what a ride it was. We are crossing over to the other side to make a special announcement that you'll not want to miss. It's a bonus drop over on the other side. Keep an eye out for that. It'll be out soon. If we don't see you over there, we will see you back here next week for an all new episode of BCC. Until then, good night.
And go get regressed.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I want to go on a camping trip with
God.
Nate. Like, don't you feel like you could just sit in a cave and drink whiskey with that guy and talk about it?
Yeah, pack a purple robe. I love it. I just don't want to buy any snakes, and no offense to that guy, I don't want to burn. Bigfoot Collectors Club is produced and engineered by Riley Bray and executive produced by Riley Bray and Michael McMillan. Our theme song, Come Alone, is by Suneaters, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. Follow Suneaters on Spotify. For 3 bonus episodes every month and ad-free episodes, check out BCC The Other Side at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub.